Hey, and welcome back. So I left off in the last video kind of on a cliffhanger. Now I'm going to teach you how to get some really good constructive feedback. The first step is context. You need to be clear about the context of the meeting. It's so important. If you don't, each person may have a different understanding of how far along your design is. They may also try to give you feedback on irrelevant portions of your idea. And with a larger crowd, this can get so out of hand, and it can get out of hand quickly. Try preparing your invitees ahead of time with a quick intro before the meeting, or you can send them a quick message beforehand before everyone actually sits down. It doesn't need to be lengthy, but it can be it can actually set a good baseline so everyone is really understanding of the context of that meeting. You also really want to have clear goals. You want to point out which aspects you're looking for feedback on. And you want to state the non-goals that are out of scope or just not relevant to your design yet. Another big thing is you want to let people know what stage you are in terms of the design process. Let them know how far along you are. This really helps set expectations. This matters since our fidelity naturally increases over time. We may start with sketches and gradually build ourselves up to a really nice high fidelity mock-up. Visual feedback can really bog down the discussion, especially if you aren't even there yet. So it's really good to kind of set that precedent and set those expectations right off the beginning. You want to ask those open questions. Raise any open questions that you or your team has regarding your designs. And that way your attendees can actually bring value and insight for you. The next is invite only the people you need to. This may be harsh. I know, I get it. You may not want to do this. You may want to invite a bunch of different people, and you may think that they'll give you a lot of feedback. While this type of openness is good, not all feedback is equal, and that's just the ugly truth. For your feedback to be constructive, it needs to come from the right people. It may not be the CEO or others with big titles. It could be somebody else who understands the space much better. Could be like a customer service representative who talks to users all day. So really think about the problems you're trying to solve and who has the answers to your questions. Figure out who's mandatory. Those with the most knowledge of the problem space, maybe even developers who are implementing your designs who can give you feedback on stuff like that. Also, people who you need buy-in from. Those people can be like your internal stakeholders, or maybe it is like somebody like the CEO or like the product manager from the client side. So you need to really think about those people that are really mandatory for that meeting. But you also need to think about who is optional. You can invite others, but you want to try and keep it a little small. When you do direct your questions, direct them to the people who you really feel may give you the feedback you need. And optional attendees, they may bring some more insight as well. You may be surprised at who brings something up that is really interesting or may really help you with your designs. The next thing you want to do is mobilize your group. Put them to work. Open critiques have their place, but you may run out of time if the discussion gets out of hand. To come out of your meeting with the feedback and priorities moving forward, you need to really get your group involved. Make sure you get everyone involved. That means all the different types of people in that meeting, even yourself. And I'm going to tell you how you can do that. So step one, what you want to do is you want to use a whiteboard that's large enough for your group so they can add their feedback or questions to stickies. Get them to do that, time box them and give them 5 minutes to really think through things that they want to bring up so they can have a discussion about it afterwards. When they're done, they can just post their stickies right up to the wall or the whiteboard. You really just need a big space. Step two, this is the voting time. So you want to time box this and set aside enough time for everyone to go through the list of stickies and vote on which ones they think are of highest priority. They should always vote on the ones they find impactful, relevant, or important to discuss together. Step three. Now, this is where everyone kind of comes back together. They go through what they selected and they discuss. The top voted stickies aren't necessarily the best ones, but if enough people voted on it, it may mean that it resonates with them. It may be a good point to talk about that during that meeting or, writing that down and talking about it later if it isn't too relevant. You got to be wary about your conversations and your feedback meetings getting derailed. It definitely happens. Sometimes feedback may not be entirely relevant to the topic you want to focus on, and others may get so excited about it and it could derail the conversation. It happens all the time, and that's totally fine. It's just natural. The group activity that we just outlined should stop this, but in the event that this issue does arise, bring up its relevance to the goals you stated for the meeting. If somebody is bringing up something totally irrelevant, and maybe we're talking about a checkout flow or something like that, and somebody brings in something like product pages and that don't necessarily mean anything to the checkout flow, then you should kind of bring up that goal that you first stated in the beginning, and maybe hopefully you'll get back on track. I feel like it's always good though to bookmark the feedback that does come. So that way, I think it's always good to bookmark the feedback that you do get, and come back to it as a group at a later time. I always show, or I always, I always show, and I always make sure that my attendees know that I've bookmarked their actual feedback so that they don't think I'm ignoring them. So this is a process you can use to get great feedback. Just remember that you want to give them the right context. You want to set the goals for your meeting. You want to get everyone together that should be there and get them to actually work together to give you feedback as a group. So that way one voice doesn't just dominate a room. And also so you can get the right feedback from the right people. And always, always stay on track. And that's how you get some constructive feedback.